My name is Kristen Singleton. I'm the Director of Tools and Technologies at Education Resource Strategies. I've been here for roughly 11 years, and the majority of my work involves taking the ideas and the concepts that come from the consulting work that we do and turning them into online tools. I can see the participant list for the session today, and I recognize a couple of names there. I'm glad to know that you could join us today. And today we're going to work on going in depth on School Designer and making sure that on the other side of this you have a good sense for how you'll be able to use School Designer in your districts.
My name is Kate Apfelbaum. I'm a communications specialist at ERS, and I think you've gotten a few emails from me. I do a lot of our content generation and audience engagement work, and so a big part of my role today is just making sure that we get the right information to you in a way that's accessible and useful. So any feedback that comes later, we'll be looking at as well.
Great, let's get started. Before we dive into the content, I wanted to lay out the objectives for our time together today. Some of my assumptions are that many of you may be central office team members in your districts. You may be coaches or working with groups of coaches, or you may be an area superintendent or somebody that works directly with groups of principals in your district. As a member of one or more of those groups, we expect that you may be an ambassador who goes back to people in your district and introduces School Designer to them. And to that end, we wanted to make sure that coming out of this, you have at least a good familiarity with the structure and the content in School Designer. It may take some time for you to get in depth with all of the resources, and we can talk about that toward the tail end of today's presentation. But we wanted to make sure that coming out of this, you at least have a sense of what School Designer is, a good sense for the content that's in there, and that you feel prepared to be able to explore the tool on your own. Second, we're hoping that you can use the time today to begin to start to shape a plan in your district for using School Designer as part of your planning process. We believe that School Designer is a powerful tool for you to use as a group. And coming out of today, as you start to formulate your plans either for the remainder of the summer or as you're going into the fall, we hope that you'll include School Designer in those plans and for work with your school leaders. And then finally, we want to make sure that you have a sense for the role that we can play in using and helping you use School Designer well. In particular, the portions of this where you can ask and have questions answered as a member of our online community, and then just make sure that you can also have a way to connect with and work with each other in your ongoing work with School Designer. So that being said, let's dive in. Our agenda for today, I'd like to share a little bit about ERS. I suspect many of you are at least somewhat familiar with ERS because you've received our newsletters in the past. You may be visitors to our site. Maybe you've used some of our tools and our content. I recognize several of you who have done some of our work with our online tools. So I'd like to talk just a little bit about ERS and just making sure you understand who we are and the context for our developing tools like School Designer. I wanted to spend just a little bit of time talking about other school design resources that we have available online. But the vast majority of the time we're going to spend exploring School Designer. That's why you're here. And so we want to make sure that we can get to the core of that. We'll pause for some questions and discussion as we do a little bit of exploration. And then we'll also end with any ongoing questions and discussion that you might have, just to make sure that we've covered all the things that you came into this wondering about. And if we didn't answer them along the way, we'll make some time to explicitly do that at the end. So a bit about ERS to get started. As you can see, we're a nonprofit organization. We work primarily with urban school systems on helping them organize their resources. We view that as people, time, technology, and money, so that every school succeeds for every student. As an organization, ERS has had more than 10 years of experience working with large urban school systems on strategic resource allocation. Our nonprofit status is particularly important to the approach that we take to our work. It enables a different kind of partnership that we can pursue with districts and states, and it's one where we participate along with our district partners and our state partners in the transformation struggle, creating insights together and sharing lessons with each other. Ultimately, we need all of our resources to work together across the system to provide opportunities for each student to succeed. I'd like to share briefly a portion of the core beliefs and values that guide our work and thinking. We believe that all students deserve a great education tailored to their needs. One school at a time is not enough. We have to redesign systems to create the conditions for schools to succeed. And most important, we recognize that it's not just about how much you have, but about how well you use it. We know that not all schools are failing and that there are many examples of excellence. And at the same time, we also believe that one school at a time reforms aren't going to get us to excellence at scale fast enough. In particular, we believe that our work has impact when it causes changes in understanding, action, and resource reallocation, all with the goal of improving outcomes for students. You should see a number of these core beliefs reflected in the way that our tools are organized, the things that we do to try to connect you with us and connect you with each other. A little bit more about us. You can see from the map here that we're a national organization. Since 2004, we've worked hand in hand with nearly 30 school systems nationwide, including 16 of the 100 largest urban districts. We've worked with them on topics such as teacher compensation and career path, funding equity, school design, central office support, and budget development. I hope that sharing the map gives you a good picture of the national scope of our work. We're also in the midst of an important growth opportunity in the organization. For 10 years, we've had a home base in the Boston area and partnering with school districts. In September, we'll be opening a California office led by a partner, Joe McCown, and a small group of associates. And this will give us improved abilities to serve California and Western states. If you're familiar with ERS's recent work, you may know about School System 2020, which is our vision for 21st century urban school systems, where all resources are connected to student needs. School System 2020 is a diagnostic that includes qualitative and quantitative assessments in 7 key areas. We have them displayed on the screen here. Clearly, school design is one of those key areas. And as part of System 2020, our work involves helping school districts chart a course, particularly in school design, from one-size-fits-all learning environments with rigid schedules, class sizes that don't accommodate different learning needs, and help them move to ones where schools have restructured teams and schedules, they have personalized learning environments, and they can offer support that responds to student needs and promotes instructional collaboration. You may be also familiar with us from implementation of our resource map. It's typically something that comes from our larger consulting engagements. It involves taking the data that typically exists in sometimes siloed systems, often in places where the departments and the groups may not necessarily collaborate on what they know and how they're using that information together to improve student achievement. And our resource map typically covers many of the questions that you see on screen here, but it's an in-depth picture of how well a district's resources are aligned with its strategic vision. Some of the questions in school design we talked through a little bit with System 2020, but ultimately we're working with school systems on helping them think about how people, time, and money fit along with the school context, student need, and district strategy. As part of our work in creating resource maps and in doing System 2020, we've surfaced a number of tools that we think offer an opportunity for those people who may not be engaged in a specific school design engagement with us to also learn about our perspective and take steps on your own to work on strategic school design. I'm going to switch just really quickly over to our website. I wanted you to be able to take a look at some of these resources online. In particular, Designing Schools That Work is a publication that many of you may have heard about in one or more of our newsletters, but it underscores several of the important principles that undergird our school design work. We call them the Big Three. In particular, they are excellent teaching for all students, personalized learning and support, and cost effectiveness through creative solutions. The overall structure of School Designer is going to reflect these Big Three, these principles, and we're going to see how this plays out into both the content that's in School Designer and then some of the structures that you see in School Designer later on. School Design in Action is another one of the materials on our website or publications that you may be familiar with. This is an opportunity to explore in depth the work and profiles and case studies of districts that are doing deep implementation work and then optimizing their resources for student success. So with that background about ERS and the work that we're doing, let's talk a bit about School Designer. In order to get started with School Designer, all you need is an ER Strategies account, an ERS account. A School Designer is a free tool, and you'll be able to access it at the address you see below, erstrategies.org/schooldesign. Content, again, is available for anybody who, if you already have an ERS account or you've had one for a period of time and you haven't yet explored School Designer, this is a great opportunity to do that. If you're new to erstrategies.org, this is a great opportunity to create an ERS account. Creating an ERS account allows you to get updates about new tools, functionality, and enhancements, and it ensures that you have access to exclusive tools and content on our website. When you arrive at the page for School Designer, you'll likely be logged out, as you'll see on screen here. There's a short video on the bottom left of the screen that gives you a quick introduction to School Designer and discusses several of its features. Today's webinar is going to be recorded. We're going to go through many of those features in more depth than is covered in the video. But in the event that between the webinar and then also the video, there'll be a good opportunity for you to introduce School Designer in your districts. So let's go ahead and get started. Working on School Designer has been a great opportunity for me as a technologies member of Education Resource Strategy staff. We piloted the tool with several districts in 2014, and since then we've used it to support the strategic school design process in several districts, including Nashville, Tennessee, and the Denver Public Schools. School Designer brings many of the resources that are available on the ERS website into a single planning tool, which we think is among its strengths. School Designer provides you with guidance for each step in the school planning process. We've got multimedia stories of innovative schools and the work that they're doing. We've got school artifacts, including protocols, templates, things that you can use to begin the process in your own districts. And then we also give you access to other interactive tools on our site that help you diagnose your school's needs and do things like building schedules. We've got things such as interview protocols, but things that are going to allow you to go in much more depth in the school planning process. I'd like to use these 4 points as the entry point for being able to look at school design together. So we're going to work through between some of what you see here in PowerPoint and then also working online. But we're going to use these 4 points as the departure points for being able to look at School Designer in more depth. So again, there'll be a little bit of switching back and forth between the two, but we're going to try to spend the bulk of our time in School Designer. So let's get started with guidance. The overall framework and each step in School Designer are organized to provide you guidance as you go through the planning process in your district. In particular, you'll see that School Designer has a toolbar on the top that reflects ERS's step-by-step framework for strategic school design. That will always be there and available to you as you're working in School Designer. And then the overall structure of the content in each step is also going to be available to you so that you can take yourself through the structure of our framework and then using School Designer to get more in-depth in the strategic school design process. So let's take a look at this online. I'm at the School Designer landing page. And as I mentioned, we've got the 7 steps of our framework reflected up top in the toolbar. That toolbar is locked, so as you're working with the tool, you'll be able to always have kind of a home base that takes you through which steps in the process that you're working through. We do recommend that you treat the steps as a sequence that you can go through in order. We realize that some of your schools may be a bit farther along in portions of this than others. You may have gone through a process with your school where you may have laid out your strategic vision for your school, or you may have done some work using our tools or other tools that exist in your district on assessing the needs. But we do think it's important to treat them as a bit linear so that you can go through and make sure that you cover all steps that are in the planning process for strategic school design. I also wanted to give you just a quick summary of what you have on the page here. You can see that each step is going to have an introduction, and that's going to give you a kind of a departure point for being able to engage with the content of the step. So we'll give you a quick summary of what's ahead in the steps, and you can see some of the other tabs that are in here. I'm just going to speak to them really quickly, but they are portions of our customized versions of School Designer. Right now, in the public version of the tool, they have some content that lets you know what would appear in the customized version of the tool. But you're going to see that in each step in School Designer, you're going to have that introduction that takes you through the content of the step, and then you'll have a collection of materials and resources as you progress down the page so that you can get further in depth into the work that's involved in that step. We think that this consistent structure, across the tool, we hope that it gives you a good grounding and orientation as you move through different portions of it. I'd like to take a look at the third step in School Designer in particular because it has a slightly different organization compared to some of the other steps. When you click on step 3 in the process, you'll see that you have this extra tab that appears here called Power Strategies. Power Strategies are specific resource strategies that you can use to go in more depth and ensure that you are able to work on those core principles of school design that we talked about earlier. On the Power Strategies pages, you'll have each of the Power Strategies listed down the left. And then on the right side of the page here, you have some blocks that show you effectively how much of the content you've covered in the tool. Now you're looking at my version of School Designer. I've been in here quite a bit. So the combination of what you see here may be different than what you see in your own version of the tool. But the light blue are areas of the tool that you've already visited or explored, and the darker gray areas are areas that you have yet to explore. When you go into the Power Strategies, you'll see that they have a structure that's similar to what you were looking at in the overall step. Typically, you have an introduction, but within the Power Strategies, we also have content that's organized to really help you go in depth on that particular power strategy. So in this case, we happen to be looking at teaching teams, and we've taken some multimedia content and then also some presentations that you can see down the left side that are going to allow you to explore the teaching team strategy in depth. When you're in a step that has power strategies, you may treat this a bit different from the overall steps in that you may want to go in a deep dive on data-driven instruction, or you might be interested in individual professional growth. We think at this level, it makes sense to do some exploration on the areas where you've got good data that tells you need to focus, or things that you know are going to most support the work of your school-based teams and your school leaders. But as you're working on this will be a good opportunity for you to use the key there that's on the right to let you know what areas you've covered and which areas you still may want to explore in any more depth. Back to our presentation just really quickly. I wanted to talk a little bit about the materials that you have in School Designer. So we took a quick peek at some of the content in there, and you can see that most of our steps are going to have presentations that allow us to get the core ideas across about each step in the school design framework. Our hope with the presentations is that we can give you a good starting point in thinking about the core concepts. This may be one where as coaches, as facilitators, as central office team members, you can spend some time engaging with this core content together, and then it will help everybody get on the proverbial same page or have a good baseline of content about the work that you're about to do in each of the steps. You'll find that you also see a number of prezzies in each of the steps. The prezzies, if you're familiar with working with those, are profiles or a tool that allows you to present a much more rich and exploratory set of content. PowerPoint is a bit linear as you're going from the beginning of a presentation to the end. Prezis allow us to add different types of content in there and also allow you to do a little bit more open-ended exploration of the content. We'll talk a little bit about that later on in some of our work with School Design in Action when you see the interactive portions of our tool. But Prezis really give you the opportunity to drill down into the specifics of a particular case study or design or set of content. And then you also find that we have a number of videos that are integrated into School Designer as well. Video really gives us the opportunity to explore concepts more deeply, and this gives your school leaders the opportunity to analyze the content and then come back over time so that you can really explore it in more depth and reflect on it together. So let's take a look at that content again in the live version of School Designer. I'm going to head back to the step 1 for vision. My mistake. I'm going to go into step 2 for identifying your needs. And you can see that this one has a presentation toward the bottom of the screen here on the left. Most of the presentations are going to be in that introductory section. You do need to have Adobe Flash installed on your computer, but you shouldn't need any additional software beyond that in order to work with the presentations and the content in any of the steps. You'll be able to click your way through any of the presentations that we have in School Designer. And then at the end of this, the presentation should walk you through all of the content that you should need to be able to, again, all of your school design team members and those of you who are serving as facilitators and working to support those teams to have the core concepts about strategic school design in common and working together on the concepts as you move through your planning process. I'm going to take a look at one of the videos. I'm not going to play it just yet, but I just wanted to let you know the content that you have in the tool. So in this case, I happen to be looking at the introductory step. We have one of the videos here about Freshman Academy at Revere High School. And the video gives us the opportunity to provide school leaders with materials that they can use both to inform and calibrate their own thinking, but it provides materials that your school leaders can also use in forums such as collaborative planning sessions, during teacher leadership and coaching sessions. And a number of schools who have been working with videos have found that they really help give good context for school leaders on things. What does it look like when we're implementing this particularly well? Or what are some of the challenges that you might see as you're working on exploring this particular concept? But again, I think the primary features of working with video is it gives you the opportunity to come back and take a look at them multiple times as a school team so that you can really analyze that together. I'm going to take a look again at step 3 with the power strategies, because power strategies reflect a lot of this content being brought together. So if I take a look at the power strategy on teaching teams, you can see that it's got several elements of our multimedia content in School Designer reflected here. We've got the introductory presentation at the beginning of the power strategy. We've got some prezis that allow you to do a more in-depth exploration of some of the models and some of the case studies that are used. So these allow you to zero in and drill down to specific contents of the designs and the approaches that are used. And then we also have some of the videos. And this video in particular, the one on teaching teams at Up Academy, we found that that's been particularly generative of conversation among a number of districts who have either used School Designer or have used some of our school design resources on their own. I want to take a quick look at the resources that exist in School Designer. So you'll see that in each step at the bottom of the page, we have a section here that are around resources. And these are opportunities for you to have content that you can take a look at offline or that you can use as part of your planning discussions together as you're working on the school design planning process in your district. So a quick look at that. in School Designer. You'll notice that in School Designer, we have this tab here called School Artifacts. And the School Artifacts tab is typically used most when we have custom school design engagements. They're typically when schools are uploading content that they may be working with a facilitator with, or they may be creating content that they want to share with other school teams who are collaborating on using School Designer. Because we have the public version of School Designer, you can't upload your own school artifacts. But what we've done is we've made it possible for you to take some of the artifacts that would ordinarily be used in that process, and you'll have access to them as well. So taking a look at step 1, for example, we have some materials here on crafting a vision and the work that you might do as your school leaders might do, to be crafting a vision and then working with teams of teachers to refine that vision. It includes materials that you can use for interview protocols and even some materials that you might use to gain some insight from a student's perspective. In some cases, we have some materials that take you off-site or off to another website. So in this case, Switch I found a particularly compelling resource, and as those of you who are working on making change at the school level and in school districts, that we found that this is useful to us internally as well. So we've included that as among the resources that are available to you in School Designer. Finally, I'd like to talk a little bit about some of the online and interactive resources that exist in School Designer. And I'm just going to bring up both of these really quickly for us to take a look at together. School Designer is an online tool to help you evaluate your resource choices and identify where you are and where you may not be using your resources strategically. And School Design in Action contains detailed profiles about schools who are doing the deep work of engaging in planning processes and being able to help achieve or help implement their visions for different uses of people, time, and money at the school level. I wanted to talk a little bit about that in the context of School Designer so that you can see how we bring some of these resources together. Step 2 in School Designer gives you the option to access School Check both as an interactive tool and then also as a PDF. In the event that you may want to take School Check offline and print out copies of it and then just discuss your results together, you can certainly do that. A number of you who are in the audience today, I know, have used School Check as an online resource, and we wanted to make sure that we bring all of these resources together to be available to you as you're engaging in the school planning process. If you're using School Designer as a group, one of the important things that we can do to help support your effort is as you're taking School Check online, we can support the data collection and gathering that you're doing with School Check so that at the close of completing your School Check survey, you'll be able to take a look at how the take a look at the results for your group. It'll make it easier for you to find areas of strengths and challenges that several schools may have in using resources effectively. And then School Design in Action is another tool that is integrated into School Designer. The School Design in Action site is kind of a home base for the vast majority of the work that we're doing in school design. And it contains the master set of all the prezzies and all the school design resources that you'll also be seeing in School Designer. So you can click through, if you were taking a look at differentiated teacher roles, for example, you can see a number of the case studies, and you can explore those in more detail so that you can get a much deeper sense of the type of work that schools are doing. And then it also gives you the opportunity to do some open-ended exploration of the content. So if you wanted to zoom in on a particular area, you can drill down into the sections that are of most interest to you, as you're taking a look at portions of School Design in Action and some of the resources. I'm going to do a quick pause just in case we have any questions that have come in. Okay. We covered a lot of content for School Designer, so in the event that you have any questions, this is a good opportunity to let Kate know, and we can make sure that we get them answered for you. Great. So I wanted to turn a little bit to just talking about what we're hearing from our district partners who are using School Designer and some of the feedback that they've given us. So I wanted to start with an example of we talked a little bit earlier about the teaching teams content and some of the materials from Revere High School and Up Academy doing teaching teams content. One of the things that they shared with us was that having access both to the Prezi and also having access to the video helped them reflect honestly on what good looks like. There were some things that they had on their list. Yes, we've done that and we're ready to move on to other things or other content. But having access to the videos really gave them the opportunity to reflect more on what it looks like to be implementing some of the core concepts of teaching teams and being able to develop strong teaching teams and having a really good touch point for that process. It opened up a good set of discussion and also gave them the opportunity to reflect on it more both with their central office teams and as a school level team. Similarly, in Indianapolis Public Schools, using the teaching teams content allowed them to get to the point where several of their schools were able to increase the amount of time that they had earmarked for shared content teams. And then it also helped them develop stronger protocols for how they're going to use the time. Again, there are a number of these resources that are available on our website, but we think that bringing them together under School Designer as a single planning tool gives you the opportunity to take yourself through using these resources to backstop and support your school's planning process. Okay, we do have one question.
Yeah, from Gary Gerst is asking what the cost is.
So the question was, what is the cost for School Designer? For using the public version of School Designer, there is no cost. As long as you've created an ERS account, you'll be able to access School Designer and you'll be able to use all of the resources between Power Strategies, the Prezis, the videos, and the presentations free of charge.
Okay.
So I wanted to talk a little bit then about some of the next steps that you might take in using School Designer. The first is, if you haven't already, we'd like for you to create an ERS account so that you can access the public version of School Designer. The ERS account is free, and then it will also ensure that you have access to premium content on our website as well. Second, we're hoping that you'll take the opportunity to join the community of people that are using School Designer in our Circles online community. So I wanted to give you just a quick peek at that as well this afternoon. If you're logged into School Designer or at any portion where you're using any of ERS tools online, in the top right corner of the page, you'll have the option to select My ERS, and one of your options there will be the Circles community. Your ERS account will get you immediately into the community, and if you click on Categories at the top of the page, you'll have the option to go into the School Designer group. This is an opportunity for you to share with us and share with each other some of the ways, the questions you have about using School Designer, but some of the ways that you've used it together, some of the ways that your districts have used School Designer to improve their overall planning process. And it's also a great opportunity for us to improve the tool to support the work that you are doing in your districts. You can see in the middle of the page here, you've got the opportunity to give us several different types of feedback about School Designer. So if you had a question or you experienced a problem using School Designer, you could certainly click on one of those areas and let us know where we can do a better job. You can see also other problems that people might have reported about School Designer, and just to make sure that if there are any other questions that you have, that you can see the history of what's unfolded online. But you also have the opportunity to get access to some of the key resources that we've shared with you about using School Designer well. So among the things that people have asked, for example, are there any additional pieces of software that I need to install in order to use School Designer? We wanted to make sure that you had access to answers to those types of questions. In this case, all you're going to need is Adobe Acrobat Reader to read some of the PDFs, and then you'll need Adobe Flash so that you can review the presentations online. But you shouldn't need to install any other software in order to use School Designer. Okay, we have one more question that was coming in.
Okay, this is also from Gary. This is something we would be definitely interested. You have experts to help as we go through the process. For example, this is from Gary. We're very traditional in our secondary 6 through 12 grades with our schedule. And how would you make a student-centered blended schedule with nothing to work from? Is this something School Designer could assist with?
Great question. So I think there are a number of things in there. The first, where you started with, is what type of support would ERS be able to give in using School Designer?
Yeah.
I think the starting point for that support would likely be through our Circles community, and then also the work that you're doing together. So we think that there's great value in people being able to learn from each other in the process. And then if you have a question about how you might use the resources that are in School Designer to work on something with your district, it's a great opportunity to pose the question to the community, and members of our school design practice area, members of our organization, can also share insights and hear the particular challenges that you may be experiencing in doing the work. We also have a number of tools that are in each of the steps in School Designer that we think may be able to help you out with that as well. So in the case that I think you're talking about, there may be a number of the scheduling tools that we have that may be able to help you out with some of what you're talking about. So things like being able to, both some of the data, the assessment tools, and then also the scheduling tools. So we're hoping that you can start with doing an assessment of your district's needs through using tools like School Check. But then you'll also be able to begin that process of designing the change that you have in mind, and then using some of the tools that are in the design the change step to be able to do that. So creating the design profiles for your district, and then also in the steps here of making it work, we have access to a number of scheduling tools that you can download and that you can use on the desktop. So I think in your case, you were looking at secondary scheduling tools that you'll be able to download from School Designer, and then you'll be able to work with them directly on the desktop to work on redesigning your school schedule.
Gary, does that totally answer your question?
Great.
Yes, great. Okay, thanks.
Over here on the sidebar, you'll see on the far right that there's the opportunity for you to reach back out to us if you have other questions about School Designer. Those questions will come to a combination of Kate or myself. So the contact at erstrategies.org if you have questions about using School Designer or using School Designer in your district, or especially if you had interest in customized versions of School Designer. But again, we think that if you're going to be using the public version of School Designer and you have questions about it, please consider joining and asking your questions in the Circles online community. And we can do a good job of answering your question and then connecting you to other people who are also using School Designer to support their planning processes. Well, thank you for making the time to attend our first webinar on School Designer. We look forward to seeing you using the tool. We look forward to your feedback. We'll be following up from today with a survey about the webinar itself, and then just to ensure that we were also able to meet the objectives of helping you introduce School Designer to your school leaders and for them to take the next steps in using it as part of their planning process. If you're interested in receiving additional materials from us about school design in particular, you can sign up to receive our school design newsletter at erstrategies.org/signup. If you can also like us on Facebook or follow us on Twitter. That'll give you an opportunity to get connected with our school design newsletter and then other updates from the organization. And then you can certainly head to our website, www.erstrategies.org, to create your ERS account and get started with School Designer.
And just as you were getting some reminder emails before this, you'll get a follow-up email from me before the end of the day. And that will include all of the links you see on your screen now. So you can get sign up for our newsletter, sign up for an ERS account, and then also getting right to School Designer. And it will also include a survey, a quick survey for you to provide some feedback, as Kristen mentioned. And finally, to remind you that next Monday, August 1st, we have another webinar on our other tool, Resource Check. And we will have a guest presenter, Dr. Sean Whiteman from Marysville Schools in Michigan, to talk about how he used Resource Check to build a strategic plan for his district. And thank you very much.
Thank you very much.